that finishes rather abruptly, doesn't it?
I was like, "Oh, here we are. Let's rock."
Here we go. Yeah, and I'm still waiting to grab that link to throw it in the vent so people can find us. But I'm so happy to have you here. I so admire everything you do on LinkedIn. And Marcus, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Well, Jen, it's my absolute pleasure, right? It's we've connected, via Rev Genius to here, and it's been just awesome watching all your content from your videos and everything else. And I just love the transparency and authenticity, because when you talk to Jen, you're talking to Jen, you're not talking to a facade or whatever. So that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm excited to be here and just talk real talk about vulnerability, anything you want to talk about here.
Yeah. So, and you proposed this topic to me, which I thought was just amazing. If you could tell everyone, why you proposed this topic.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's, and I think I'll kind of share a little bit of a story, right? Because I think, vulnerability to me is one of those things where, I think, being a male, a lot of time it's, we don't talk about it enough. And I remember just, growing up as a kid, growing up early on as a young kid, I was, I didn't start speaking until I was 4 years old. So that meant I had speech issues. And then when I started speaking, I had speech impediment. So I had a lot of trouble explaining my emotions. And early on as a kid, that came out in outbursts of being angry or being upset or crying. And that was part of my early childhood. And what was really interesting was, growing up in a Chinese American household, Chinese people in general, like part of the culture is being almost kind of stoic, if you will, but also really holding in emotion, especially for like guys and men or boys. It's supposed to be like, the tough guys, they kind of put the guys on a pedestal as part of the culture. So growing up and, not really fitting that part of the stereotype and crying, being upset and getting angry, growing up, I was told often as a kid that, hey, you know what, like, that's not what, boys do. Boys are tough. You're not supposed to cry, suck it up. And over time, I became almost brainwashed, if you will, right? To just put on a front that everything is perfect. Everything is, kosher. Everything's great. And no matter what was going on, to always be what they call saving face. So growing up, it became ingrained. And then going into corporate America eventually, it almost got reinforced even more, right? Like to be, the perfect corporate culture person, right? And to not show any type of vulnerability, to be like, hey, you know what? Be the epitome of success, win this, sell this, go out there and just win deals nonstop and just never show vulnerability or weakness. And that seemed to work for a while. But what was interesting is over time, I started getting feedback that people couldn't connect with that. And people kept saying, hey, listen, like, you're like a robot. Like, like you just seem to make it happen. You wake up, you're disciplined, you're organized. And I'm like, I'm actually quite emotional. Maybe I don't show it enough, right? But it's almost like I overcorrected, if you will, from when I was a kid to as a young adult to an adult. And it's one of those things where over the last several years of my corporate career, I started getting that feedback a lot, because as I started progressing in my career, as it became more distance from the field reps, a perception was getting developed about me. In their mind, in their eyes, about this guy Marcus who doesn't make a mistake, he's a robot, Mr. Perfect or whatever, and that was far from the truth, right? And I knew that was a huge opportunity for me. So over the last several years, I've been really working hard to hopefully work on my being more vulnerable, being more open, right? And and things which happened in my life have helped over time, like being married to my wife, and she's, she busted me up so early on to open me up. And it's been an ongoing journey for me. Now, I'm not perfect by any means, but that's why I constantly like to share stories of, of vulnerability and failure and mistakes I've made, because I want people to understand, like, who I am today is not, I'm nobody perfect. I'm just an average guy who busts his butt, makes a lot of mistakes. And when I saw, from you, watching you, I always felt very inspired, because you just spoke just so openly from the heart. Things that I've been scared to do, right, growing up, things that I still am scared to do. And I thought to myself, this is a good opportunity to really lean out of my comfort zone, get really uncomfortable and talk to Jen about this, because she's the master of it and do such an authentic, transparent way. And I think we can have a really great dialogue, because I think I have a feeling, maybe my circumstances are maybe a little more dramatic, if you will, but I feel many people, especially, men, struggle with vulnerability. they struggle because they feel like they have to portray a certain thing. And I've learned over time, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I'm still working on that piece as well. But to me, it's such a powerful topic that I think, you know what better person to talk to about this than you?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. You shared so much right there, which was amazing. But we rolled right into it. So I'm assuming everybody knows you, the top voice of LinkedIn for sales. But why don't you, in case there is someone watching who doesn't know who you are and how amazing your content is and what you're sharing out there on the platform, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Once the engine turns on, I keep going, right? So, I'm Marcus Shan. I'm a founder of Bentley Consulting Group, creator of a program called Six Figure Sales Academy. I'm really fortunate. As you mentioned, was recognized on LinkedIn as a top voice, which is I feel very honored for that. That privilege, right? But what I do is I work directly with B2B sales professionals to help them sell and earn more, right? It's a business that's been in business now for over a year now. It's been an incredible year, lots of ups and downs like anything else, but it's been an incredible journey. But before that, I was in corporate America for 14 years, and I worked for two major corporations. I was really, really fortunate. I started as an entry-level sales rep, was able to get promoted multiple times, 10 times in 10 years. And get promoted and run big teams and, hit President's Club and win awards and do all cool jazz before I eventually left that to start my own business. But it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to chat more about this.
Yeah, no, and I am too. I mean, I think vulnerability, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. And I go into her work on shame and perfectionism and vulnerability. I think about, some of her quotes where, vulnerability is that birthplace of motivation, creativity, and change, right?
Yes.
Or that, vulnerability is the essence of connection, that human connection, that in order to really have that connection, you need to be vulnerable and need to be seen and show yourself. And so, as this is a struggle for most people, I'd love to know what you think about why vulnerability is important, especially in sales.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we talk about sales is about connecting relationships with other people and prospects, and I think at the very heart of it, when in sales, when you are looking to start up a partnership or bring on a potential new client or customer. At the end of the day, I think the very heart of it, people never want to make a poor decision in who they choose. Like they don't want to have the buyer's remorse. And they're always afraid that what's being portrayed is not what's real. And that's where I find vulnerability so powerful, where I always found personally, honesty is the best policy, right? To be honest and direct. And that goes into being able to show you're also vulnerable as well. And that's where it's really powerful. And I'll give you examples. So, I have people that join my program all the time. And, I've had people say, well, it's like, how do I know I'm going to be successful? Right. Like, and I'll tell them very directly. I'm like, hey, listen, like, my online digital portion is important, but it's not that important. And they're like, what? I'm like, my coaching is important, but it's not important. Like, what? I'm like, the most important thing is you. Like, it doesn't matter how great my stuff is. But if you are not willing to be coached or do the work, you're not going to have success. And if that's the case, it's not going to be a good fit for you and I to work together. And being that open and direct, and really, I'm showing that vulnerability. I'm not telling them what they want to hear, right? I'm just telling them the truth. And there's a lot of power to just pure vulnerability with a prospect. Like if you tell them it's not going to be a good fit, that's okay. That's 100% okay. I'll give you another example. So I was talking to a potential client a few weeks back, and they're an independent contractor and they sell like medical linens, and they were having a lot of success. In fact, they had grown so much to the point where they want to continue growing, and he wanted help. So we got on a call, we were discussing it, but after 15, 20 minutes, it became crystal clear to me he didn't have a sales issue. He had an operational issue. He actually needed to hire more internal people to run his business. And I told him straight out, I said, hey, listen, like I can help you with this, but it's not my specialty. I'm not focused on being an intentional business coach. Like I can help you, but it's not my expertise. My expertise is helping you in sales. And he was like shocked. He was like, oh, really? Like he was ready to pay and have me start helping him. But I'm like, hey man, like this is not a good fit. Now, If you hire some salespeople to work for you, yeah, that's a little different, but we're not that stage. It doesn't make sense. And being crystal clear about that is so powerful, right? And I don't, it's, and I want to be really careful here. It's not about using vulnerability in a way to be deceptive or to persuade someone to buy from you. It's just being real. And people really respect that. People like to know that you are a real person. So vulnerability is very powerful in being able to connect with somebody else, to know that you're being honest and real, and you are going to help them only if it makes sense by going that path together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And so you shared with us a little bit about your struggle, especially with your background, right? So how did you overcome that? Like, as time went on, how did you get past that concern about, how you were perceived to be able to be vulnerable? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. I think the first piece was, it starts with awareness. Just being massively aware that's been a shortcoming. And I'll tell you right now, it probably did not become as I probably did not really recognize the power of it until I was probably 21. I remember distinctly the moment it hit too, because I was 21 years old. I had been really fortunate, had some really good sales success, was being tasked to lead a small team. I was still in the same role, leading a team of my peers, small team of 2 people. And after, probably, a few weeks of leading this team and doing a really terrible job, realistically, I was trying to, inspire and teach my peers how to sell effectively. And one of them made a comment to me, and they said something about how, like they see why I was putting that branch with them is because I was the golden boy. And I'm like, what does that even mean, golden boy? They're like, oh, you're the golden boy. You're Bill's golden boy. I'm like, what does that Bill was our director. I'm like, I don't know what that means. They're like, well, you're the favorite. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, you win. You always win. You're Mr. Perfect. You don't make a mistake. Like, you are just so nails. You show up before everyone else. You work like everyone else. You outwork everybody. You're Mr. Perfect. Like, you're the golden boy. Like, you don't make mistakes. And to me, that was like shock, because like what they did not realize was, like, 6 months prior, my direct boss almost fired me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, they did not realize that. They didn't see some of those things, the struggles that when I first got started in sales, how hard it was for me. All they saw was my most recent accomplishments, right? So they had perceived in their mind. And at that moment, I was like, oh, wow. Like I realized at the point, like, I came in so gung-ho, and I realized at that point, they had no idea where I came from. They only saw what I am today. That was like the seed implanted in my head. And as I progressed in my career, I continue to see a reoccurring theme. And sometimes, like, people would they would just make these little comments, or sometimes behind my back, I hear about it later. Sometimes directly to me, but it was never like in a malicious way. They just make these little comments like, oh, you're just Mr. Perfect, or you don't make mistakes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I woke up today, like I put like 2 of the wrong socks on. What are you talking about? Like, you're like, I mean, like, but I started having this realization over time, right? And each year it would grow a little more. And it was probably about it was right before I got into a director level role. So at this point, about 2015. And I was interviewing for a director level role, and I had a lot of success with my company, and I've been with the company for about 4.5 years. And I was interviewing for a really high level role, which I'll be leading, at the time, 9 teams of like 85 reps. And my direct boss asked me, he said, hey, listen, what do you think is going to be a perception of you before you, go into this role, into this role? What do you think people think about you, the reps and other teams, the managers? And I said, well, and at this point, because I'd already realized it, I'm like, well, I believe they have seen certain things. They've seen my track record now. They've seen my success. They've seen how I lead trainings for the whole region. They've seen my impact as a sales manager. I have a feeling in their minds what they're going to think about when I step in that director role is they're going to think, oh, you know what? This guy is probably a machine. He's a micromanager. He's going to micromanage the hell out of all of us. Right. I already knew that was going to happen. And he's like, And he's like, you're right. That's probably what people think. I'm like, And then once I got into that role, that was my assumption, right? Because, people were kind of scared, new boss in town, right, if you will. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to show incredible vulnerability, right? And that really solidified. As I started doing that, it was amazing. People would open up to me, right? These reps and managers, like, wow, like you are not what I expected. Like you are not what I expected, right? Like they saw the outside, but once they got to know me, they're like, wow, he's actually a legit dude. He makes mistakes too. He's real. He's funny. He like, I had no idea, right? And that was really, really important. And so that was really that 2015 timeframe was a really good solidification for me of, hey, you know what? I'm on the right track, because part of my strategy, if you will, was to be able to show vulnerability as much as I could when interacting with them. And that was a powerful way for me to, gain their trust, get them to know, like, and trust me, and want to work with me and work together to achieve their goals. So that was really kind of the pinnacle of that realization. Now, it's still an ongoing process. I'm still working on it, right? It's like, but at the end of the day, I think as long as you start with awareness, accepting that type of feedback, and just constantly working on improving your vulnerability, but do it in a way where it's not like you're just like complaining all the time or something, right? You're just being able to show your real authentic self and be able to show, hey, you know what? Here I am. Here are my mistakes, my flaws, whatever. And if you love it, great. If you don't, that's okay too. And that's okay too.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is really that it was part of sharing that journey of where you got to where you were, and sharing those stories, right? So it's all about really storytelling and being able to relate to someone. And I think that one piece is powerful when I hear what you're saying, is that storytelling. Now, Christine shared a comment here. People's perception of one's path is so interesting. Instead of assuming one's work, open up and have a conversation. I think that's really powerful. I find that the best conversations I have are very two-way, where I'm sharing and the other person also has that opportunity to share. And they're more likely to feel comfortable sharing if I'm willing to be vulnerable and say something that isn't so perfect, isn't so, look at me, I'm just amazing just the way I am. Instead, saying this was difficult and I'm struggling with this, and being vulnerable with that. Is that what you would agree?
100%, right? It's being open to sharing the journey, how you got there, and the mistakes you made. I think that's so powerful. And I'll give you a really good example, right? So one of the things I did early on when I started traveling to these locations, because I knew they didn't really know me that well. They knew me from their perception they had about me. But the first thing I did was, I huddled each team in whatever city I was in. I huddled the team. And I would do like over food. We have like food and stuff. So this was kind of open, kind of relax. It kind of makes it a little more relaxed. Not like Mr. Director's in town, so I'm like, I'm kind of relaxed. And then from there, we had this thing was called My Reflections, which is we get to share personal things about ourselves, our family, what we believe in, what we love. And it was a really powerful visual way to show people, hey, listen, like, this is my background. Like, I grew up really poor. This is like my family. They're immigrants. Like, they had a restaurant. Here's a picture of the restaurant. Here's my wife. Here's the ultimate clothes I had. Here's my son. Here's the books I like. Here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what you may not know about me. And that was really powerful in sharing that. And then I would sit down with each of them, after, and I would just get to know them. Like, they were expecting me as their sales director to sit down and grill them on their numbers. And I remember we would sit down, they come in, they're a little nervous because they don't now, like, okay, maybe this is a show, whatever it was. And we'd spend 30 minutes and I would just get to know them, who, their families, what they're about, what brought them here, what gets them excited, their fears, whatever. And that was really important. That was just opening them up, because if they shared something they struggle with, I made sure I put them in a position they understood that it's okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to have challenges. And that was really, really important because then they would know I had their best interest at heart. Most people in that leadership role, they would sit down with them. They say, hey, I'm really struggling with booking appointments. Most of those leaders say, well, you just need to make more calls, just make more dials, and you'll just push through it. Well, let's talk a little deeper. What makes you struggle? That's okay. I struggle too. Let me help me understand a little more about your situation. What are some things you're doing right now? And really getting to know them and uncover what's really going on in their world, and helping them, push past whether it's limiting beliefs, or skills they need to develop. And those, all those constant deposits, if you will, are so powerful. And I did that by being able to show vulnerability consistently and constantly. And that was really, really important. One really fun exercise I did as well, and this is this really helped me as well. Help show vulnerability. I did a simple exercise, and those two of them that I did. So when we're eating lunch, we're kind of sitting at the conference room. We're out to lunch as a team. I'd be 8 to 10 reps, and I would ask them. I'll say, hey, let's play a game. They'd be like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna play. And I would say, hey, you just finish the sentence. All right. I say, if you really knew me, you would know blank. Like fill in the blank.
That's amazing.
It's really fun. Now I would tee it off, right? So I made sure I always started off because I don't want them to do some super surface level thing. So I would make sure whatever I threw in there was a story about vulnerability or something like that, because I know they saw certain things. I need to make sure I brought down that perception. So I would say, hey, if you really knew me, you would know I didn't start speaking until I was 4 years old. And people thought I was a special needs kid. And that was the thing early on that I had to deal with. And that was mentally traumatizing as a kid. And people are like, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah. Like most people don't realize English is my second language. So sharing stuff like that so they could see, wow. And hopefully it would open them up and they would be inspired by whatever I shared. Another story I did was I'll say okay. If we didn't do that one, my other favorites was like, hey, so we're eating lunch, same thing. I'm like, hey, so we'll go around and say, hey, I want you to share either a hero, a highlight, or a hardship. A hero, a highlight, or hardship in your life that you feel comfortable sharing. So of course, I would share. I'll kick it off. I would say, hey, listen, let me share with you my hero. My hero is my dad, but let me explain why my dad's my hero. And I would share about how he grew up in communist China, being put in a re-education camp, the struggles he went through, and how he came to America, and how I feel now I have a personal duty to give my best every single day because my dad left his entire family, went across the world, and had nothing here for a risk. So there's no way I could show up every single day and not give 100%. And so I would share stories like that as part of the Triple H, if you will, right, or whatever. Yeah. Because it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, because I believe as a leader, it's our responsibility to lead by example. So I say, hey, here's my example. Now, if you are comfortable with it, please share with me your Triple H or whatever you want to say or whatever. So those type of things are so powerful in terms of helping open people up to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I think those are great exercises and certainly actionable takeaways for anyone who is listening, who is looking for something to sort of prompt that vulnerability in their team. I think especially when you are giving the point of understanding what someone's fear is. In sales, it's so important to get past that fear, the fear of cold calling, the fear of presenting. And so I think this is a great opportunity to really understand that. We do have a comment. Christine says, I've had similar opportunities when taking on a leadership role. Once people get to know me, they realize the perceptions, assumptions were totally wrong. Me as well, that once I start sharing more of myself, those perceptions sort of fade into the background, right? Yes. And there were old ideas. And what becomes the new reality is who I actually am. And understanding me as a person and as a leader that's there to service them and to really be able to, be invested in their success and them know that, feel that, because having that trust, right, is through that storytelling and that vulnerability. So that was a really amazing exercise. I actually wrote it down as you were saying.
It was so fun, right? I mean, it's one of those things where I find as a human being, if you will, right? Like it's liberating. It's liberating to be able to just be yourself and be open, just share some of these things. And I think if you're a leader watching this, like you have to be really aware as a leader. It's hard for people to come to you and be vulnerable. It's really hard. It's hard for them to come to you and say, hey, boss, I'm struggling. I need help. That's hard. It's hard for people to ask for help. So I believe as leaders, we have to constantly say it's okay. Say it's okay that we don't have the answer. Say it's okay we made mistakes. Say it's okay, and create that that psychological safety, if you will, with your people. So this way they feel comfortable helping them, right? And obviously not everyone's going to be able to say, hey, you know what, I'm on board. I'm totally open. But I think it's one thing where if you show up every single day and you just do your best to do it, it'll over time they'll start being more open as well. And you have to continue to do it, right? Because it can't be an event. Vulnerability is not an event. It's not like, okay, today I'm vulnerable. I'm gonna put one post on LinkedIn being super vulnerable, and then after that, I'm just business as usual, right? Like being vulnerable, it's about becoming a better human being and being more open and being really comfortable in your own skin and who you are and accepting whatever happens from it. And not everyone's gonna like that, and that's okay. That's 100% okay.
I think especially in training, though, you're a sales trainer, right? That being vulnerable and understanding and connecting with people to understand their fears is how you help them overcome them. I mean,
100%.
because it's 100%, you have to overcome that fear of dialing, right? Overcoming public speaking, overcoming whatever fear it is that you have that's sort of holding you back and those limiting beliefs. So I think it's super important. Now, I want to sort of transition a little bit because you're bringing me such great stuff. I have an event later today on social media, right? And I noticed that you're able to really bring your vulnerability to social media. You're just as authentic in person as you are, with what you post and how you share. Would love to know your thoughts on how to be vulnerable on social media and what that's like for you and how you got to that next level, right? Because it's one thing to do it in person, right? And it's a whole nother level to do it live, do it on podcasts, like share yourself in your posts and in what you're producing.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's been a journey. Okay. What some people may not realize, and what some people see today, like, oh, hey, Marcus, like you seem like you're pretty well spoken on podcasts or lives, or you're a pretty good writer, pretty good on video. Well, what most people don't realize is I've been doing this for 5 years, right? I've been trying to post stuff on social media for 5 years. Okay, so that means I have had literally thousands and thousands of terrible videos, posts, whatever, over time, and so first of all, it's important to understand there's a journey even within that, right? The first thing is you have to accept who you are as a person. That's a really important thing. And I believe you have to do it for the right reasons. If you are wanting to be vulnerable on social media because, I'm just going to, close more deals and get more sales, that's not the right way to think about it, in my opinion, right? It should be, I want to be vulnerable because I want to serve more people and to help more people. Right. That's why I do it. I'm vulnerable on social media because I want people to understand that I'm a regular person in Portland, Oregon, who has made lots of mistakes, plenty of mistakes, but hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and avoid them for yourself, right? Or at least accelerate your learning curve. That's important to understand that. Okay. Have the right intention about, why do you want to become more vulnerable and why do you want to share your voice that way? And the next step is, as you are thinking about how do I go ahead and actually tactically do it, you have to start off with like how are you going to first start showcasing, right? And then if you think about even social media, there's many ways to showcase it, whether you can do it via text or video. You can write articles, you can have whatever. I think the important thing is well, I think about LinkedIn, you should have a goal with that post. Okay. Like if it's gonna be a post or a story, if your goal is just to simply, say you had a tough week, you want to share that, that's okay. Put that out there. Okay. But if every single day that's all you post, how every single day is tough, now you just become a complainer. Right? Like now you're just a complainer, right? So it's being able to take that and really transition that into something that's gonna be of value to other people as well. So like for example, for me personally, I'll share via even my LinkedIn posts, my text posts. I'll constantly share stories. I'll share lots of stories of, maybe perceptions and breaking perceptions or challenges or struggles, right? It's, for example, like, I was really fortunate. You mentioned the LinkedIn Top Voice thing. And, I feel very fortunate about that. Well, and most people think, oh, wow, look, on surface, oh wow, like you built this thriving business in a year, you're top voice, you're featuring these articles. Wow, that's so amazing, Mr. Robot. No, what most people don't realize is I still outwork like majority of people out there. Like I outwork majority of people. I'm constantly thinking about the business. I made tons of mistakes. I blasted through thousands of dollars making mistakes on different things, right? Like I've wasted time on many things as well. My focus in the wrong area as well. But the thing is I don't let those things hold me back. And even when I went on the top voice thing, even when I put a post about that, I shared some up front because I don't want people to say, oh, there he goes again, winning another award. But the reality is it's like that iceberg principle. People see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see everything below, all the struggle, the hardships, the wanting to quit. Those all go through our mind, right? So that's okay to share some of that journey, right? So it's share some of that journey in whatever way you feel comfortable in stories and posts, etc. So I share that story there, right? I shared a story today on LinkedIn about how I graduated from college with zero debt, and my parents didn't pay it for a single penny. And it sounds cool and it's a really neat thing, but I shared the journey that got me there was me working literally 40, 50 hours a week while going to school full time. Like that's what it was. It's summertime. I was working 80 plus hours a week, and most people are unwilling to do. They're just not willing to do that. So sharing those things and stories is very powerful. But then there's a lesson though, right? At the end, there's always a lesson of some sort. So in that post, it's got to be a lesson of some sort. And my lesson here was, hey, listen, it is hard to do all the things I just did and bust your ass and work while going to school, but it's also really hard to deal with school debt. So you got to choose your heart. That's my lesson. Choose your heart. And every post should have some sort of moral lesson from that. They can take away, because if it's that narrowed down, that's very powerful. If, for example, if you have maybe a tough situation that you want to share that's really vulnerable, what kind of lesson can you take apart from that to inspire yourself, but also other people? And if you start thinking in that way, you can start creating some really powerful content that connects with the hearts and minds of your readers and your viewers, and take them to the next level, right? And you can do the same thing with stories, right? Stories are another powerful way as well. It's like, I'll do here's a good example, right? So I do a lot of LinkedIn video DMs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And some people are definitely very, very much like, okay, I want to make sure I'm in the right area in my house with the perfect lighting when it's like the golden hour of the sun, the right angles, etc. Right? And they want to practice the script like a million times. That's fine, but it comes off very robotic. Like I'll do my video DMs. I'm literally walking. I have an Underdust treadmill I'm standing on right now on my treadmill, and I'll just film a quick video and say what's up. Right? It's real. It's vulnerable. If I stumble over my words, I'll just keep going. Right? Because it still happens. But the reality is just by being real and vulnerable and through all your messaging, the more you do it, the easier it gets, from your text to your videos to your stories. But the key is do it with the right intention. And if you do over time, you'll it's not like gaining followers, but you'll gain more people that are going to want to listen to your message, and you'll gain new friendships and relationships. And that's going to lead to other opportunities for you down the road by simply being real and authentic.
That's amazing. And you know what? There are so many actionable takeaways in this episode, but we're right at time. I can't.
Time flew by. Wow.
Right? That time just flew by. But I think there was so much there about how to overcome vulnerability, how to get past it, how to get teams to engage and really start sharing so that they build that trust. Additionally, what to do on LinkedIn and social media and really sharing those lessons. I think that's really powerful. And, I hadn't considered that, but usually the posts that do better for me are really about those lessons, the lessons I learned along the way. And it hadn't really occurred to me before. So thank you for that. That's amazing. And thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that you brought this topic to me. Honored that you were just willing to share with the audience. And I think this was just an amazing episode. So thank you.
Well, Jen, is my absolute pleasure, right? So it's a lot of fun talking about this, right? It's, I think at the end of the day, it's, it's understanding vulnerability is, again, not an event. It's an ongoing journey. I'm constantly working on it, right? I can still be better. I still have times where I hold in my feelings from my wife. I'm upset about something. I got to work on that still, right? But at the end, as long as we understand, we're aware of it, we can constantly work on it. If we all can work on it, well, the world will be a better place by simply focusing on being more vulnerable.
Yeah, there's always more to learn. There's always more to grow. And it's a journey, right? So later today, we're talking about social media, specifically the social dilemma. So I've got an amazing panel of people. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern. If anyone who is here wants to join us later today. And then next week, I've got Sue Sign, who is the host of the Outcast podcast. And she's going to be talking about being a woman in sales on the other part of the globe. So thank you everyone for joining me. I'm going to share some quick information about later on tonight. And thank you, Marcus. So glad that you were able to join me and you brought this topic here. So thanks
again.